World Regions Geography in the Global Context, People, Places, and Environments. Lecture 1. Welcome to the class. It's World Regions Geography 110 here at Modesto Junior College. And we're going to get started. So we want to start thinking like a geographer. So what does it mean to say we think like a geographer? Well, geography, a lot of times people think it just means maps, but it really is not only maps. It is about relationships. And it's about global relationships. Global relationships, that's the secret. Human environment interactions. So how does man interact with his environment? How does he change it? How has he modified where he lives? If you look over here, these people are modifying this region. They're modifying this area right here. They're carrying, looks like they're carrying goods up and down this hill. Physical geography is one aspect of geography, and it is the climate, landforms, and ecology. So our physical world, what is the world around us? We're in a valley. There's mountains, there's oceans, there's rivers. That's all part of the landforms. Climate, what kind of weather? In California, we have Mediterranean climate. What kind of plants, what kind of animals live there? Human geography is about the spatial organization of human activity. So how does man use the land? How does he modify it? Do we clear cut forests? Do we plow the grass under and plant crops like in the Midwest? Or do we irrigate the land to grow crops? What do we grow in any special place? Do we grow nuts around Modesto or grapes, or do we grow vegetables? Those are all important aspects of human geography. How is that organized? Environmental geography is what connects human and physical geography, and it's those connections that really are important and fun to look at. So when we're thinking like a geographer, we're going to start thinking about world regional geography, which examines geographical processes. It explains why and how patterns emerge. So we look at this map of the world and we say, oh, there's all these different regions. But how come we chose this region? How come this is a region? How come this is a region? Or this? The reason is because there are connections that could be linguistic, could be cultural, could be historical, could be in landforms, but there are definite connections that unite the people in those areas. Now, what we're going to do is start here in Europe, right here, and we're going to go over here to the Russian Federation, Central Asia, and Transcaucasus. Then we're going to explore this region right here in the Middle East and North Africa. And then we'll come down to Sub-Saharan Africa. Then we'll go over to the United States and Canada. And then we'll go over here to Latin America and the Caribbean. And then come to East Asia, South Asia, then Southeast Asia, and last Oceania, which is all your Pacific Islands and Indian Ocean Islands. So region, or places and making of regions. Regions are aggregations of places. And in the beginning here in the first chapter, you have to read a paper. It's called A Sense of Place. And it's an important paper. It describes places and how we put values on those places, how they mean something to us. You may think of places that mean something to you, and a place could be your grandmother's house. It could be a friend's house. It could be your high school. It could be Modesto Junior College. It could be Modesto. It could be the Valley. But places have meaning. And it's the connection of places over time that form regions. So all these different little places come together and they form regions. Regionalism is a strong feeling of collective identity. So how do we see ourselves? We probably see ourselves as people from the Valley, people from California, Americans, Mexican Americans, any number of ways we see ourselves, that is a regionalism that we identify with a place. Another important concept in geography is maps and mapping. And maps and mapping are just the visual representation of Earth's surface. So in other words, how do we show it? We're looking at relationships here. Now, if you look at these maps, these are three different types of projections. All of these show the way, if you look at this map and you look at this map, you go, wow, this area here is much bigger than this area, but they're the same area. It's the way that the projection is that causes it to look different. So how you're going to use a map is important in deciding which projection you would use. Now, two things that make up a map are the latitude and longitude, and they form a grid system. Now you see these lines here that run this direction. Those are latitudes. They run parallel to the equator. Sometimes people call them parallels. And then longitudes run pole to pole. So they run up and down. Latitude runs around. There's two other concepts we're going to think about. One is globalization and regionalization. Now, globalization is a system of elements that are linked together. So that could be things like economies. That could be things like language. That could be trade. Globalization includes how people travel, where families are linked, where ethnic groups are linked. Lots of things link us globally. When we often think about globalization, we kind of think about it as a thing, and it's really more a system. So globalization is kind of this intensive connections between various regions, and it could be between nation states, and it could be between different parts of the world in terms of trade, one a producing country, one a consuming country. There's lots of ways to look at globalization. Regionalization is about why new regions emerge. So how are things changing? What is being created when we look at new regions? So emerging world regions may be changing wealth patterns. It may be new trade patterns that are beginning to exist, new labor migration patterns, lots of different ways that regionalization could play into how we see different regions of the world, different parts of the world. So the world is a collection of regions, and some of those connections are strong. If you look here in this picture, one of the things you will notice is there's some kind of traditional things. I mean, the actual flag on there is not traditional, but the type of hat is. And then there's also people that would not look out of place anywhere in Western Europe or the US in terms of the way they're dressed. Organizing and exploring the world's regions. The framework we're going to use for studying regions is environment, society, and sustainability, the history, the economy, and territory, culture and populations, and future geographies. We're going to start with environmental, society, and sustainability. The environment is everything that surrounds us. Very little is untouched nature. There's very few places you can go in the world that do not have signs of man's impact on the land. Whether it is clear cutting, whether it is planting, irrigating, herding animals, building roads, stringing telephone wires or electric wires. There's very little places, very few places you can travel anywhere on this globe and not see evidence of man. Human impacts on the Earth system. We now live in the Anthropocene, which is the time of man, and human activity dominates Earth systems. So Earth is dominated by man. In other words, we are constantly having an impact on everything going on around the globe, including our climate and our weather, which are being modified through global warming. So climate and climate change. Weather is short term. That's the current precipitation, current temperature. It's what's happening right now. Boom. An hour from now, a week from now, it's changed. Climate is the average weather at a location over time. So California is in a Mediterranean climate, so we typically have hot summers and rainy winters. Now we may have more or less rain, that's weather, but climate is general. Climate systems are how solar radiation interacts with the atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, and biosphere to create systems of air movement and moisture movement around the globe. And those are somewhat predictable. We'll explore that a little bit more later. Atmospheric circulation, very important to think about. Air and ocean currents, they're what drive our weather. They drive many of the things going on our planet. Many of the ecosystems transports heat and moisture from one place to another all around the globe. Ecological landscapes. Everybody's heard of greenhouse gases. The cars we drive, burning fossil fuels, causing greenhouse gases. Those are gases that go up in the atmosphere and they trap heat, just like a greenhouse, and they cause the planet to heat up, and that's global warming. That heat trapped in the atmosphere starts changing our climate. And one of the ways it changes the climate is simply by changing precipitation patterns, wind patterns, ocean currents, all of those types of areas are all part of global warming.